After playing metalcore for over 15 years and over the past 2 years helping thousands of guitarists learn the art of riffing, this is a type of riff that speaks to most guitarists who are into this style of metal. That's right, I'm talking about the 578 classic metalcore riff. But a lot of guitarists don't understand the power of the 578 riff, what makes it so appealing to listen to, and how to write their own classic metalcore riffs using the 578 concept. That is why I wanted to make a full lesson covering this exact idea, so let's get right into it with where the 578 riff gets its name. It comes from a specific scale in a specific key that I call the metalcore scale. I'm not going to cover the scale in detail, but essentially there is a proper way to learn the scale and approach the metalcore scale for this style riff, and I did a full lesson on this that comes with an entire guide that you can download for free if you click the link below. The metalcore scale is known as the natural minor scale or the Aeolian mode, all the same scale, but it's honestly probably the most used scale in all of metal music. But what makes this scale so amazing for playing awesome metal riffs is the fact that whatever this note here, that low 6th string is tuned to, that is also the root note of the scale, or the note that the scale is named after. So I know that I can come back to this throughout my riff and it's gonna sound good. And generally this style riff is going to be played in drop tuning. I'm in drop C sharp right now. So that means that my root note is here, which we talked about on the low string, open, but it's also here. That's the first note of the scale on the 5th fret of the 5th string. First note of the scale, 2nd note of the scale, 7th fret of the 5th string. 8th fret is the 3rd note, 5, 7, 8. That's where the name comes from. And this minor 3rd, that's a very melodic sounding interval. So it sounds awesome when you're playing heavy, awesome, melodic riffs. The entire scale is this. It's a very melodic scale. The flat 3rd, the flat 6, and the flat 7 make this scale very easy to listen to, and that's why it sounds so good when you incorporate it with a lot of heavy, awesome chugging. And if you put in the time to master the scale the right way to play riffs like this, then you can simply just pick up your guitar and improvise and play stuff that sounds pretty good like this. Now let's talk a little bit about the structure of the 578 riff. The sky's really the limit for what you can do with a riff like this. Anything that sounds good. There's no rules in metal. But the popular 578 riffs, like the ones that I played for you earlier in the example that I wrote for this video that you're going to hear here in a little bit, they all follow a similar concept that I call bouncing. Essentially, you're just bouncing between the bottom 2 strings, sometimes incorporating in the 4th string as well, while playing palm muted chugs in between accented notes on the either A or D string that create a melody in between those chugs. That was just a basic example of this concept. Something that you could do that's very simple to make this riff more interesting is change up the notes that you play in that melody the second time around. Also, changing up the bass notes that you play so you're not always just playing that open chug can make the riff more dynamic and ultimately a lot more interesting to listen to. Also, adding a tail in at the end of the riff after you play it through a few times to help transition to the next part of the song or whatever you're going to do next. I use trills for that example, but you could use something like octaves. You could do like a run up to a pinch harmonic. You know, anything that you can come up with. Let's talk a little bit more about being creative with the 578 metalcore riff. Since there's only 7 notes in the minor scale, it's really hard to come up with something that has never been done before in 40,000 years of music. In fact, it's probably impossible. You're probably never going to come up with a melody in your life that has never been created before, at least close enough to where somebody would say, hey, that sounds like that. But that's okay, as long as you're not deliberately taking something and calling it your own. If you come up with something and somebody else has already come up with something that sounds similar, you're probably going to add some ideas and some techniques and play it in a certain way that makes it different enough that you can call it your own. But mastering the metalcore scale is the absolute first thing that you need to do before playing 5/7/8 metalcore riffs like this. These are the notes on the 5th string that I can use to write melody. The way that I came up with the riff that I've been showing you guys as an example that I wrote, this is basically where it started right here. That was the first step. That was it. That is where the entire riff came from. And then I started to add in some chugs in between this melody. Try not to be overly repetitive with my chugging. Sometimes I'll add in like different techniques like gallops in place of the simple just downstroke chugs. And then I'll come up with some sort of tail, like for this one. I just use the trills, and that's pretty much a riff. And then, like I mentioned before, you can switch it up by adding in, different bass notes or different styles of chugging, and then come up with something that, sounds like this. Anyway, take this idea and today go write some awesome 5/7/8 metalcore riffs. But make sure that you click the link and watch my lesson on the metalcore scale. It's going to teach you exactly how to approach the scale, exactly how to learn it. That's going to be super simple, and you can pretty much just start writing awesome riffs today.